You guys know I love podcasting and listening to podcasts, and I'm guessing if you're listening to this that you love podcasts too. Have you ever considered podcasting yourself? It is a great way to reach your audience, grow your know, like and trust factor, and not need to show your face unless you want to. If it is something you've thought about but you don't know where to start, then head over to becomeapodcaster.uk/BAP quiz, BAP quiz, to access a 2-minute quiz that will help you work out what type of podcast might suit you. That's becomeapodcaster.uk/BAP quiz. In this week's episode, we are going to be talking about practice. Let's go. You're listening to the Wedding Procast UK, the place to be if you are a UK wedding professional looking to grow and streamline your business. I'm your host, Donna Eade, 10-year wedding photography veteran and CEO at the Society of Professional Wedding Vendors. If you want to grow and streamline your business, this is the podcast for you. Make sure you hit subscribe where you listen, or join our email list at www.spwv.co.uk. You'll find the sign up form at the bottom of every episode, and by doing so you won't miss a thing. So let's jump into today's show. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. My name is Donna. I am your host, and in today's episode, we are continuing our startup series. Now, if you are already in business, please remember this episode will still apply to you. So make sure you continue to listen. And if you know somebody who is looking to start a wedding business, then please share this series with them. It starts on episode 115 and will also include next week's episode as the final episode. So please make sure that you send this series over to somebody who is starting in their business. So practice. This episode actually brings up one of the very good reasons why I started the Society of Professional Wedding Vendors. Now, if you have not heard of the Society of Professional Wedding Vendors, where have you been, my people? Do head over to www.spwv.co.uk and you will be able to find all the information about the society there, and you'll be able to sign up for our waitlist. It is a society for professional wedding vendors who want to see standards raised in the industry to make sure that our couples are getting the best of the best for their budget. So today we're talking about practicing, because it is not as easy as some people make it out to be. I have heard from so many people that have said that their friend thinks that they could be a wedding photographer because they've got a digital SLR. That does not make you a wedding photographer. A wedding photographer is so much more than a camera. So it is not that simple. And people who believe that it is are not right for the wedding industry. We do not mess around with somebody's wedding day, and we certainly don't mess around with somebody's wedding day when we haven't worked in the industry at all. So for me, that is a big no-no. Somebody who thinks that, oh, I can make pretty flowers look good together. You know, everybody's always complimenting me on my vases when they come round. I could do a bouquet and, you know, posies for bridesmaids and a flower arch and all that. You can't. No, you can't. If you hand make one invitation, like a birthday cards, and people say that your cards are beautiful and, oh, you should do wedding stationery. No, it is on a much bigger scale. There is a lot more involved in creating identical invitations for a wedding than there is making one birthday card. So it's not the same. And it really sort of stresses me out that people think that it is as easy as just saying, oh, well, I'm going to do a wedding. It's not. It's really not. So today we are going to talk about some horror stories that I have heard over the years, why you need to practice if you haven't already realised why you need to practice, and how you get that practice, and how do you know when you've done enough. So let's jump straight into it. So working in the wedding industry, as I said in the last episode, is so different to working in any other industry. There are so many different pressures involved at different stages. So a wedding stationer is under this pressure to create a bulk load of the same invitation. Maybe they're personalizing it for the couple. Maybe they're doing the addresses on the envelopes. They could be doing the full service for them. That is extraordinarily stressful. Did I even say that right? I'm not going to repeat it. But it is, because this is going to be people's first view of this upcoming wedding. This is going to be their first impression of what is to come. That's a lot of pressure for somebody. So it's got to be right. Wedding photographer, I've always said it to my couples, and it always stressed me out every time I said it because I reminded myself of it, is that your wedding photos are the one thing that you have left after your wedding day. So I always said you come out with two things at the end of the day: your husband and your photos, or your wife and your photos, and you best hope both are great, because that's what you've got left. The cake's been eaten, the food's been eaten, the table decorations have gone in the bin, the dress has gone into storage, the bridesmaids' dresses are with the bridesmaids, all the flowers are dead, everything is gone pretty much. You may have picked up a few mementos, maybe one of the table plan, the menu, your cards and things like that. But a lot of it is going straight in the bin, or has been consumed, or has gone into storage. So your photos and the marriage are what you have that commemorates everything that happened on your wedding day. So no, it's not as easy as just picking up a digital DSLR and shooting with it. That's not going to cut it. One of the other things is that people don't realize that doing something for pleasure and doing it as your job has completely different results. I started as somebody who loved photography. I picked up my first camera when I was 12 years old. I bought my first camera when I was 13 years old. And I have always loved what photography is. Capturing those moments in time so that you can look back and remember them. It is magical to me. And I have always said, and you've probably heard me say it before, but if my house was on fire and my family was okay, my photos would be the thing that I would grab. Why? Because they can't be replaced. Memories fade. Pictures can be those elements that jog those memories and bring them back to the forefront. And that is what I absolutely love about them. So I was absolutely thrilled to move into the wedding industry because I love, I love weddings, and it was just the marrying of two of my favorite things. Unfortunately, the anxiety got me. The stress that I put on myself got too much for me. But also there was this element that, I enjoyed taking the photos. I enjoyed being there on the day and doing that stuff. I did not enjoy the editing process as much. That was something that I was never as good as I really wanted to be at it. I struggled to kind of find a style that I wanted to stick to, and it was something that just really never gelled for me. So that was hard. So, it's not as easy as people seem to think it is to just pick up whatever tool it is and start doing it. Okay, so I wanted to bring you some of the horror stories from my 10 years in the industry. And, well, I've got plenty, but I am going to stick to just 3 today to illustrate my point of why it is important to practice and not practice on a real wedding day as the lone provider of that service. So I probably mentioned these stories before, so if you've heard them before, I'm sorry, but it is worth reiterating. I was a wedding coordinator for a hotel for a year, and at that time we had a couple come in and get married. They had a lower budget. They did have different people providing different things. I think they did their own centerpieces for the day, and I think that this was the wedding where they decided that they didn't need to pay for the people to install the chair covers and the sashes. Oh my days, people, do not try and educate your couples. Do not try and put chair covers and sashes on yourself. I remember the bride and her bridesmaids being downstairs when they should have been getting ready, trying to get all this stuff done. Then the bride went up to get ready and her bridesmaids were left downstairs trying to get these things done, because we don't provide that service. I mean, we did help out because, you know, it wasn't going to get done in time, but the bridesmaids were there putting chair covers on when they should have been upstairs with the bride helping her get ready. So it was a little chaotic. The night before, the groom and his best man delivered the wedding cake. So there was the first issue. If there are any cake makers out there listening, you will know that you do not like anybody to deliver your cake but yourself. And I have watched so many fantastic cake makers on Instagram show you delivering the cake to the venue and putting it together on site because of some of the intricacies of what they're doing. So a lot of the times cake makers will bring a kit with them, like to check if there's any sort of cracking in the fondant or anything like that. They can fix it on site and make it look stunning before they leave, and then they sign off on it. It is then over in somebody else's responsibility, but they make sure that it leaves their business, gets to the venue and looks perfect when they leave it at the venue. Some others will deliver it to the venue and then it gets put in the venue to cold store because maybe they have to deliver it the day before, but it's all put together and it's all perfect. It is then the responsibility of the venue to look after it. But I have never seen a groom bring in the cake before. So it was obvious to me that this cake was not made by a professional cake maker. And when we opened the box, that was confirmed because the groom had already said it slightly collapsed on their way over, which was a big concern. And when we opened the box, one side of the cake had completely collapsed. So the bottom tier was completely crushed and the fondant icing had all crushed down and split and broken. Same with the center one, and then the top tier was just kind of balancing there. The person who had made it had put balls of icing around each tier to cover up the cut marks for each tier, and those had stayed exactly where they were at the front of the cake, what we called the front of the cake. They stayed where they were and the cake had moved about 2 inches backwards. So what had happened is this person hadn't rodded or boarded the cake. So it had no internal support at all. It was just 3 sponge cakes stacked on top of each other. And I know if there's any cake makers listening, they are going to be horrified and screaming at their device right now, because I made a wedding cake once and it was the hardest thing I've ever done and I never did it again. But I did make sure it was boarded and rodded. Why was I asked? Because I used to make novelty cakes for my friends for their children's birthdays. So a novelty cake, there's a lot more design element involved than this cake that I was asked to make. It was just plain fondant icing, 4-tier plain fondant icing with ribbon round each. It was simple. But the construction of it is not as simple as a novelty cake, because a novelty cake is normally held together with toothpicks. Like, that's the biggest cocktail sticks. That's all you need is a cocktail stick here and there to hold on an arm or something. But, you know, these rods and boards were a different kettle of fish, and this cake had none of that. So it is really important that if you are going to be somebody who is making wedding cakes, that you are making an awful lot of cakes for free for people and doing some training so that you know how to structure a cake so that it can stand the test of a car ride. And I mean, even cake makers hold their breath when they are delivering a cake because it's not easy. I have seen some fantastic gadgets that can hold a cake in a box that look absolutely fantastic, but they're probably pretty expensive and you still need the box to stay still when it's in the car. So that's a whole nother factor. But yeah, this bride and groom had a cake where we had to fudge it the best we can by moving all the balls back to the tiers and just hoping that the photographer would be able to angle themselves so that you couldn't see the back of the cake. I hope she did that. As a photographer, I was sitting there thinking, this is a nightmare. I don't know how you do this, but there is a certain angle you could have taken it at. The next horror story is a florist's horror story. So this happened to a friend of mine who was getting married. And this is, again, if you are in the industry, if you are a florist, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can do wedding flowers. It is a different ball game, and it's not to say that you couldn't, but there are other factors to consider. So if you were asked to put a bouquet together for somebody, you may be able to get away with changing out some of the flowers, because the majority of people will just turn around and say, oh, I want some purple flowers, I want some pink flowers. You know, they don't necessarily know the names of the flowers. Some people may say they want roses, you know, but they give you kind of a vague idea, and you put a bouquet together for them and they love it. But on a wedding day, the flower choice is specific, and certainly the colour of the flowers is specific. So my friend had ordered a certain colour of flower, and I can't remember the colours, but I remember the story. So I'm going to give you some colours just as an example. So she had ordered some pink flowers, and the flowers that came were not pink. They weren't anywhere near pink. And when she phoned up the florist said, oh, they didn't have those flowers in stock when we went, so we got you those instead. Now, these flowers were so not pink. They were a different colour entirely. But the simple solution to this would have been a phone call to the bride and a request, you know, one, get your ordering system in so that you can make sure that the flowers are available. But if you are going to change the colour, you go for something safe, don't you? So white doesn't clash with any other colours. White is a perfectly good colour for a wedding, and if you had no other choice because you didn't have the colour that the couple wanted, then giving them a call and saying, look, I'm really sorry, but that colour didn't come in the order. I've got white. Can I do that for you? That would have been much better than sending a completely different colour that clashed with their whole theme. So she was not happy, which I can completely understand. But it's one of those things that when you are in the industry, you understand that there are pressures, you understand that things that can go wrong, you put in contingencies in place. Now, this is not to say that this person hasn't ever done a wedding before, they possibly have, but it absolutely boggled my mind that she would send, without asking the bride, a completely different colour to what she had ordered without checking whether white would be suitable. Like, that just seems like common sense to me. But these are the things that you need to have practice in the industry. You need to see what's going on in the industry so that you can do this. So I am going to pass on my final story just because I am looking at the time that I am spending and I haven't even got on to the how you get your practice. So we are going to move swiftly on. So the first thing I want you to look at doing is shadowing people. So asking if you can shadow somebody. Now, definitely look at talking to people that are outside your area. And I think I said this in an earlier episode of this series, that go outside of your location. So if you can travel, 30 miles down the road, this would be really good, because that is kind of a distance that is like, you're not going to be their direct competition. So they're more likely to offer help and assistance and give you these opportunities. So if you were, for example, going to want to do photography, if you contact somebody who is a photographer that's 30 miles away and say, hey, I'm really interested in getting into the industry. I'm just sort of feeling things out. I'm 30 miles away and I would really appreciate if maybe I could shadow you on some of your shoots, just so I can get a feel for how a wedding day runs, and then possibly look at volunteering for you and doing some second shooting for you. So shadowing is by far the first step, in my opinion. This is so you can observe, so you can really observe, because if you're volunteering, then you need to be working and you can't always pay attention to what's going on around you. So if you can get a couple of sessions where you can shadow them, see how they work, see how they communicate with the couple, see how they communicate with the guests, see how they are working outside of that guest experience. So when they're not in front of guests, when they're not talking to the couple, what are they doing? How are they storing their equipment? How are they moving around the ceremony? How are they moving around the venue? And take in all of that information and be able to take notes on it, things that you like, things that you would like to do differently and such like, that is going to give you a much better foundation to start from. Then the next step is to volunteer and give your time for free to be a second shooter, or if you're wanting to get into one of the other industries, to help out with doing whatever it is that they do for a wedding, and give your time for free. Don't expect to be paid for it. If you are serious about starting a business and making money in the business, then you want the best experience possible to back you up, and that will come at a time cost to you. So definitely when you're volunteering, when you are second shooting, this is not the appropriate time to be asking them questions. This is not the appropriate time to be like talking about settings on your camera and like, what setting should I use for this? What setting should I use for that? There are moments, and if you have shadowed, you'll know when those moments are, that you can say, hey, we're going into this room, it's really dark, I'm not really sure what best settings would be for the movement that they're going to be doing, whatever. You will know when that's appropriate if you have shadowed somebody. But ask for a meeting afterwards where you can, maybe jot your questions down throughout the day whilst you're working, and then go back to them afterwards and say, look, always thank them. Find people that you really like their work, so you can praise their work and say, I really liked your work. I would love to see how you actually make it come together. Things like that. Flattery will get you everywhere. So definitely do that. Do the shadowing, do the volunteering. If you can, get a job in your industry. So whether that is working for a photography studio on reception, whether it is working Saturdays in a florist's, whatever it is, try and get like a few hours a week working in that environment if you can, because that's going to help you to make that transition into your own business as well. I would suggest working a whole season in the industry as a volunteer / shadowing people before you start doing your own thing. So this is something that you have got to be prepared to put the time and effort into, because weddings are so super unique that you just don't want to risk not having enough information behind you. So if you do one season, and I would say, a season could be completely different depending on the vendor that you're working with, but I would say a minimum of 10 weddings before you even think about going out on your own. Family dynamics can be so different within weddings. Places that you work, lighting setups, if you're a photographer, can be so different. You need to be able to work. You need to be able to work quickly and change things up, and you need to have the experience of being around that kind of change to be able to do it yourself. So definitely, if you can get at least 20 weddings in that first year, that would be ideal. You can look at working with more than one photographer or more than one cake maker to get that experience up. But it is going to be a hard slog, because you're going to have to continue doing your day job, and then you're going to be working weekends. So this is a full-on commitment if you want to do it the right way, and if you want to be able to provide excellent service to your clients. Be honest with your clients, okay? So I said at the beginning, how long is enough? And I've just said, at least one season, minimum of 10 weddings, preferably 20 plus weddings under your belt. And then it's down to how you feel. Do you feel confident going ahead with this? You can always ask somebody to second shoot for you, somebody who is in the industry. If you are hiring, that experienced photographer, you may well need to pay them because they could be doing their own wedding. Maybe try and get some off-season weddings where they could maybe lower their price to come and shoot for you, just so you've got that backup with you for that first couple of weddings, so you can get your foot in. That would be a really great idea. Then, like I say, be really honest with your clients about your experience level. You need to price yourself appropriately, because obviously if you haven't done any real weddings yet as the main person, as the shooter or as the stylist or as the planner, then you need to make sure that you're your couple is aware of the experience that you have had and that your prices reflect that. And then go above and beyond for your clients. The fact is, if you are a lower price point, you are going to attract people with a smaller budget. And these may not be the people that you ultimately want to end up shooting or, working for, whichever capacity it is that you are working for them. You may not want to work with the lower end budgets. You may want to work with the mid-range or the high range budgets, but you're going to be starting out and you're going to be at a lower price point. So that is who you are likely to attract. That doesn't matter. You need to treat them the same way you would treat any couple with any budget, and especially the budget that you want to work with. Give them the full experience, give them 100% of your effort, give them the wow factor so that they look at it and they go, my God, it was worth so much more than what we paid for it. And then ask them for a testimonial. If it can be a video testimonial, all the better. But a written testimonial, a spoken testimonial, or a video testimonial with a photo of them on their wedding day from their wedding photographer, so you know it's going to be an excellent picture of them both looking spot on, and then share that everywhere. Because your word of mouth referrals from them are going to come from people that are going to have similar budgets, because like attracts like. So if you are photographing somebody who has got a lower budget, the likelihood is a majority of the people around them are going to be in the same sort of economic bracket. And that means that if they recommend you, you're going to get that same sort of client coming to you. And that may not be what you want. Your prices will increase. So it may be that that naturally takes those people off the table. But what you want to do is have those testimonials, those referrals, so that you can show people, I've done this work for these people, they loved it. They can see the quality of the work that you put out for those people, and then you'll start attracting people in the price bracket that you're aiming for. So this is kind of a little bit of a bonus for you there to talk about how you would price yourself. Now, I was told when I was a wedding photographer that every 10 weddings increase your prices until you get to the price point that you want to be at. So I would say that's every 10 weddings that you have completed, not booked, because you need to be able to show that work. You need to show that progression. You need to be able to show the quality has improved, because it will improve over that period of time if you are practicing and working on your craft. So every 10 completed weddings, up your prices, and it doesn't have to be by a lot, maybe 10%. 10% increase every 10 completed weddings. And like I say, that is going to eventually price out the people with the lower budgets, if those aren't the people that you're wanting to attract, and move you into those higher brackets. Now, it may be that really what you want to do is you want to shoot lots of weddings each year. That is your jam. That is what you want to do. And you want to work with those lower budget brides because you want them to have a great service from somebody who is just enjoying it. And some people do. They just really love working in the wedding industry and want to be doing it every weekend if they possibly can. If that is you, have at it. You may not increase your prices much beyond your starting point if you're wanting to work at that lower budget price tag. But that is completely up to you, where you feel comfortable. But know that if you want to move into the higher brackets, then that increasing your price every 10 weddings is a great way to do it. And you getting those testimonials and referrals in will help as well. So that is it for today. We have looked at why we need to practice, and just to talk to those people who are already in the industry, you guys know that you need to practice as well. And that is why we do mock shoots, so that we can practice and be creative and let our energies out, and maybe some of the things that we can't actually do on a wedding day because it's not quite practical. We get to explore that creativity and just grow as business owners and as people in the wedding industry. So practice is important. You don't just do it and then forget it. You need to be continually doing it as you grow your business. Every scenario is different when it comes to weddings. Like I said earlier, family dynamics, all sorts of situations can arise, different things can go wrong. There are, sometimes upwards of 20 vendors working one day, all trying to coordinate to make this the perfect day for a couple. That is lots of moving parts. So there is always room for error. And that is why experience is everything. The more experience you can have, the more likely it is that you will have dealt with something similar and you will be able to pivot quickly, knowing what you need to do next. Know that there has to come a time where you are going out alone. There is no way you could go and experience everything that would ever happen on a wedding day before you start. It's just not a reality, because every wedding, something different will happen. So you just need to have a variety of experience that, like I say, will enable you to be able to go, oh, I dealt with something similar, I can pivot, and that you can do that and feel confident with it. Shadow people, volunteer. Out of your area is a really great place to start for that, so that people don't feel like you're going to be coming up and then taking their clients, because although we try to work with that collaboration over competition, it is hard when new people come into the industry. I understand that a lot of people are, suspect of it, because we have had so many people just start a business, pick up a camera and go for it and ruin wedding days. So definitely head outside of your area, the area that you're going to want to work in, so that you can maybe connect with some vendors who would be willing to have you shadow and volunteer with them. Do at least a season, 10 weddings minimum, 20 plus is better. Be honest with your clients about your experience and your pricing and why it is such, because that is the most important thing. When your clients trust you, then they're going to be more relaxed with you. That means, especially if you're a photographer, the images are going to be better, and then you are going to have even better stuff to work with to show people, so that you can increase your prices, you can increase your know, like and trust factor in the community. And also with all of the shadowing and volunteering, you're building your network so that you have people that you can call on if something does go wrong, or if you've got a situation where you need help. Hopefully you will have built that network and there will be people there that you can call on as well. So that is it for today, guys. Next week is going to be the final episode in this series, and we are going to be looking at business startup help that is available for you, because the wedding industry is very specific, and I highly recommend getting yourself into a wedding organisation like the Society of Professional Wedding Vendors, or many others out there that offer trainings, so that you can get that experience of the industry. But setting up a business, like we talked with Lucille right back at the beginning, those foundations of how to set up your accounts and things like that, that needs to come in as well. So next week we're going to be talking about where you can find that information and how you can implement it. So I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening. If you have got a friend that is looking to work in the industry, then please share this series with them, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now. Don't forget to hit those stars and leave a review of the podcast where you listen if you found value in what you heard today. It's a free way you can help the podcast reach more people just like you.